Well, good afternoon, everybody. Please have a seat. Man, it's a long auditorium. It takes a while to get down here. All right, they told me I gotta be up on the stage because they're actually gonna videotape this because I guess we weren't able to get the DCO working. Is that an IMSC issue or a 24th Air Force issue? 24th Air Force, huh? Gee, I don't know. I was with 24th this morning, and they seem to think things were the other. I don't know. Anyway, well, we won't get sidetracked on that, but we do have to talk about that. So, well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon and taking the time to come over here and give me an opportunity to get to meet you and talk to you a little bit about myself and what the command is doing and where we're going. It is really a pleasure to be here. This is going on my third day this week in the San Antonio area, and every day has been just a great adventure. This morning I saw the 46th Test Squadron Det 2, as well as the Air Force Life Cycle Management Center folks that are supporting 24th Air Force, and that's cool stuff. And everywhere I go, I run into a couple IMSCers, since you are everywhere, you know. So it's been a great visit so far, and I think for the rest of my visit, which is this afternoon and tomorrow, I'm with IMSC. So I'm really looking forward to having that opportunity. I've had a chance to interact with General Carter now for quite a while. Before I got in this job, I was part of these wonderful VTCs that General Carter would have with all of the vice commanders in the headquarters Air Force generals, with these very collegial discussions about roles and responsibilities between IMSC and the MAJCOM. So even though I've only been in command for about 6 weeks now, I feel like I've been a part of the IMSC family for a little bit longer than that. Well, what I want to do today is first of all take a little bit of time to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about who I am. I always think that's important so that you can understand when you do one of these, what was she thinking? You can maybe understand a little bit where I'm coming from. And then I want to talk about where the Air Force is today and what role Air Force Materiel Command plays in terms of the Air Force today and into the future. Then I finally finish up with a little bit of a discussion on personnel, particularly the enlisted evaluation system. So if we go to the first chart, a little bit about me. Picture right up here in the top is me and my three sisters. Can anybody guess which one is me? Anybody? On your left or my left? I'm the one on the end over here. I'm the number 2 of 4 daughters. I grew up in right outside of Newark, New Jersey, which, if you don't know, is right outside of New York City. So I grew up in a suburb, and I always thought, okay, I'm a suburban, but now that I've been in the Air Force, I really recognize that I'm a city girl. You know, and what we call a suburb in northern Jersey is considered city by most of this country once you get around. So I didn't have any military background or experience growing up. My dad was a World War II draftee, but he served in the occupation force in Japan. He was drafted just slightly before the war ended. 2 years was enough for him to come back and use his VA benefits and go to college, which he would not have had the opportunity to do. But he didn't talk about his military service. I didn't have any relatives that were in the military. But when I went to school, I decided to join the ROTC just kind of out of curiosity to see what it was all about. And I have to tell you, I joined from curiosity, but I stayed because of the friendship and the camaraderie and the feeling like I was part of something more than just me and the cadets that were there. Now, I should also share with you that I went to an engineering school in 1974. General Carter and I were kind of comparing notes. General Carter's a little younger than me. When she went to school, it was about 10% of the class was women, or 20%, you said? About 20 to 25% of the class was women. When I went to school, it was less than 10%. In fact, there were, I was actually, my class was the very largest class of women that I had gone to. It was Newark College of Engineering, sometimes now called New Jersey Institute of Technology. There were 100 women in my freshman class. It was the largest number out of about 900 freshmen that came in that year. So let it be of no surprise to you that through most of those 4 years, I was the only woman in the room in many situations, and particularly when it came to ROTC. In 1974, when I started ROTC, women couldn't be pilots, couldn't be navigators, couldn't be missileers. We had a very limited. You could not have a 4-year ROTC scholarship if you were not a pilot candidate. So I didn't join for the money, didn't join for the scholarship, couldn't get one of those. Didn't join because I wanted to fly. And I didn't join because I needed a job because I'm a plumber. I'm a chemical engineer. So there were lots of job opportunities even then for chemical engineers. During the summer of my sophomore year, I went to work for a chemical company. And after that experience, I said, you know, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life making money for somebody else. I wanted to use the talents that I had been given for a higher cause, if you will. And so it was that combination of feeling like I was part of something special in terms of the camaraderie and the people around, and that desire to do something with my talents that made the decision to sign on the bottom line and sign my ROTC contract at the end of my sophomore year. Now, the picture on the right here is my commissioning night. Now, a couple things I want to point out to you is this further evidence of the only woman in the room. The second one is there's only 4 of us. Now, my ROTC detachment at that time on the average graduated 25 to 30 every year. But right after I signed that contract in 1976, I experienced my first force-shaping reduction in force for the Air Force. The folks that were juniors went home. There were roughly 25 or 30 of them. There were 15 pilot candidates. The beginning of my next year, when I showed up for school, there were 3 pilot candidates, and there were only a total of 15 that actually made it to commissioning that year. So when we've gone through things like we have over the last couple of years, when it comes to force-shaping activities and reduction in force, I had some very early experience with what that means. It's not nice. It's not an easy thing to do. And I know how painful it is. And I considered myself fortunate. Why I'm there and not working for a chemical company right now is that the Air Force actually needed engineers at that time. And so all 4 of us are engineers. You can probably tell from the number of glasses in the picture. And none of us were pilots because in 1978 you couldn't get a pilot slot out of ROTC. The only way you went to pilot training was if you were an academy grad. So I also had, as you can tell from that, some experience with, shall we say, institutional obstacles to accomplishing your highest objectives when you talk about the restrictions we had on women at that time. But I stayed in the Air Force. One of the things that I did, though, because of the manning level, I was afforded the opportunity to delay my entrance on active duty. And so I went from one small conservative engineering school on the East Coast to another, I guess, small conservative engineering school on the West Coast called the University of California at Berkeley. And did my graduate work there. And along the way, one of those cadets that was hanging around the ROTC lounge that I got to know probably, definitely better than any of the others was a soon-to-be radar navigator by the name of Pawlikowski. We were married about 2 years afterwards. He was stationed at Mather, flying B-52s there. And we were married for 30 years. And in fact, this picture here, it was taken in June of 2010, so roughly 5 years ago. It's my husband and our 2 daughters. We were down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was Father's Day. My husband's birthday was in June, so we had flown down there to join our youngest daughter to celebrate. I have this picture up here because it's the last picture I have of us together. Because 2 weeks later, he died of a massive heart attack. And then 3 months after that, my little sister Kathy died of lung cancer. In October of 2010, I buried 2 of the closest people that I had ever known. You know, up to that point, I went to a lot of wingman training sessions and sat through a lot of those. Okay, what are we doing here? I'll be honest, you know, when you go through that, and I never really ever thought that I would need a wingman. You know, I did it as, okay, it's my obligation to be a good wingman. Let me tell you, in October of 2010, I needed a wingman. And sure enough, there was somebody who stood up and was my wingwoman. She called me, she contacted me every day for almost 6 months, and even as of last Saturday, I got a call from her to see how I was doing. And I tell you that story because I just want you to know that, you know, even 2-stars need wingmen. And when we talk about that, we always tend to talk about it in an abstract way. I shared my personal experience to hope to make it feel a little more personal to you, and to give you a success example of somebody who stood up to being a wingman and reached out and was there for me when I needed somebody. And that experience has changed the way I view a wingman and the importance of it, and the importance of understanding how I remember that family that I got to be part of when I was in that ROTC, how we are really, many of us geographically separated from our families, how much we need each other, both because you never know when you're going to need a wingman. And you just don't know when somebody who's all squared away is going to be a wingman. So wingmen are important to us, not just to all of us, both. And I learned that lesson in a very, very personal way in October of 2010. So between this picture over here and this picture here, I had a little bit of experience that I think helps me in the job I'm in now. I know when the announcement came out that I was going to take General Wolfenberg's place, there were a lot of people that said, who is she? Because I had not been in Air Force Materiel Command for a while, and I've been doing this space stuff for about 10 years. But I can tell you that when I look at the missions across Air Force Materiel Command, I've had 2 tours at the Air Force Research Lab. I've spent 14 of the last 15 years managing major programs in system program offices. Some of that, yes, at SMC, but almost constantly, 100% of that time, touching program offices within Air Force Materiel Command. I lived through the 5-center transition and watched it. I have had years of experience at working with our depots and our supply chain. And I had this little program called the Airborne Laser for about 5 years, and I think we got some of the folks out here that were there at Edwards during some of the testing. Edwards was like my home away from home. I spent more time at Edwards in driving that 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes to 3 hours, depending on the traffic, from LAX out to Edwards Air Force Base. So you might say when it comes to and I have been, most importantly to the IMSC cats, I have been an installation commander. So I understand the importance of what IMSC does. Yeah, some might say I was a demanding customer at times when I was the installation commander. I guess we'll see how that plays out. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none perhaps, which potentially puts me in the best place because I hope that I know, at least I understand that I don't know everything, but most importantly I know what the capabilities are of this command. And my view of my job as the commander is to stay out of your way as you execute the mission, but to be there to support you and to get you what you need when you need me. So that's my view, my approach on this, and I can't tell you how excited I am about being part of this, because it's a great time, in my view, to be part of our United States Air Force And that commitment I made when I signed that contract about doing something to help a higher cause, which is the defense of my country, is probably more important now than it was back in 1978 when I was commissioned. So if we go, let's go to the next chart real quick just to finish this story. This is me in June of the next year when I once again failed at the job of retiring and got my 3rd star and was the commander at the Space and Missile Systems Center with my 2 daughters. And right below that, that is Zoe. Zoe was born on the 25th of May, and she is my first granddaughter. So the cycle of life continues on, and she beat me. We had a little contest. Was I gonna pin on my 4th star or be a grandmother first? I pinned on the 1st of June, so she beat me by 6 days. So a big part of my life now, but that my Air Force family, that's me outside my quarters the day of the change of command. That's right there on Lamb Circle, so if you're ever at Wright-Pat and you want to swing by and say hello, it's right down the block from the Officers Club. So I'm very happy to be part of both of these families. So now let's go to what's my Air Force up to today? What's our Air Force up to today? Next chart. We have the same 5 core missions that we did back in 1947. Nothing's changed when it comes to what our country asked us to do. Just let me give you a couple examples. Air and space superiority. There are F-22s flying in Syria today. If you follow the press and you listen to the secretary, she goes over to Europe and she says, our greatest threat is Russia, and I'm prepared to send F-22s to Europe. It is still the world's greatest fighter, despite the fact that others are catching up. And even the presence of it is an awesome capability in terms of protecting our freedoms. ISR, our Air Force is a critical contribution to the fight against ISIL, because every day, 24 hours a day, we have airmen at Creech that are flying MQ-9s, and we've got airmen flying close air support and relying on those ISR assets to provide our capability. Rapid global mobility. When the world needs something somewhere fast and with large volume, they don't go to FedEx. They come to our Air Force. And if you're not sure, ask the men and women at Ramstein Air Force Base who flew over a ton of supplies to Africa when we had an Ebola breakout that could have been an international pandemic. And a little bit of a piece that you may not know about that exercise, you maybe were aware about the deployment of our medical facilities and medical technicians, but Air Force Materiel Command was there too. One of the things that was done in response to that was they needed a pod, I call it a pod, there was probably a more technical name for it, for transporting Ebola patients on aircraft in case we needed to bring one. And it was LCMC that did the quick turn rapid response to build that pod and to get it there so that we could bring Ebola patients home safely without concern about impact to our airmen or the airframe. Global strike, the B-2s are present, the B-1s flying every day in support or at least as a show of force. And command and control. I know I'm probably in a joint, there's probably some folks here that at least have some allegiance to the Navy and the Army, but I can still safely say nobody does it better than we do it. Command and control is in our blood. It's been there since the beginning. And just look at the call of Joint Stars that is one of the most highly called after aircraft by any of the COCOMs. But if you look at this list and you listen to what I said, none of this happens without Air Force Materiel Command. Think about it. We can't fly F-22s without LCMC. We can't support the base that it's flying from without IMFC. We can't, the technologies that are in it come from the Air Force Research Lab, and it was tested by the Air Force Test Center. So there isn't a single thing on here that every day, 24 hours a day, there's not somebody, some airman, and I mean that in the broader term of airman, that's part of AFMC that's not contributing to providing these missions today, which is awesome to think about, but if you think about it, it's a big responsibility that's on our shoulders to make sure that we can continue to do this. And we're in an environment today that even though these missions are the same, it's not the same environment as it was in 1947. Let's go to the next chart. Let's take a look at it today. Anybody in here 4 years ago would have thought we'd be talking about a Russian threat? But I can tell you 2.5 years ago, I was really fat, dumb, and happy launching US satellites off of Atlas rocket that had a Russian engine in it. Now I'm worried about that. The Ukrainians kind of understand that as well. In fact, our secretary has said it, the new chairman for the Joint Chiefs has said it, the new vice chairman for the Joint Chiefs has said it, our biggest threat is from Russia. 40 new ICBMs was an announcement that Putin made about 3 weeks ago, about 2.5 weeks ago. The men and women of the Air Force Nuke Weapons Center need to be on their game because they are the backbone of our nuclear deterrent capability. And if you don't know, they're part of Air Force Materiel Command. ISIS and the extremist groups, I talked about that, ISR. That's another one. It was only just a little over a year ago that we first heard those terms in the press. We were going home, remember? Yeah, the Army had pulled out, and the Marines had pulled out. Guess what? The Air Force hasn't left. We're still flying missions and in a very different environment than we did before. A different threat, a different situation than even what we were doing in Iraq and Afghanistan before that. Growth and importance of the Pacific region. Any of you part of those 22 million people that had their data at OPM? I would be willing to guess there's 1 or 2 of you in here. You may not know it yet, but I'd be willing to guess there's a couple. And then the Chinese are building islands so they can do better forward projection. We can't turn to Europe. We can't turn to just to Southwest Asia. We got to worry about the Pacific too. And that's where our global mobility capabilities and other things come into play. And then finally, globalization, the economics, and the politics. Those big oceans were great, served us very well for many, many years, but they're not good enough anymore in terms of our defense. Something happens around the world and it impacts us in a big way. So this is an environment that requires it's very dynamic. It requires that we are able to respond quickly in very different ways and maybe do things that we never thought we were going to do. So how do we do this with our Air Force? How do we ensure that our Air Force is ready and prepared to come to defend our freedom as we have done since our beginning? Well, our chief and our secretary have thought a lot about this. If we go to the next chart, one of the things that the Air Force did back last July was to publish a new strategy. It's called America's Air Force, A Call to the Future. Anybody in here read it? Anybody seen this? A couple hands. I recommend to you, if you have a couple minutes, that you go out on the Air Force webpage. On the portal, you'll actually see it there, and pull it down. It's not a very long read. I think it's less than 10 pages. But because it really outlines what our leadership, the Air Force leadership, sees, and therefore for us, what's the path to make sure that our Air Force is prepared to continue to provide that our capabilities to the defense of our country. And the major focus of the document talks about strategic agility. That's the ability to be able to respond to those different type of threats and different fights in an agile way, to be able to swing from the Europe to the Pacific, to be able to go from what's a counterterrorism threat to dealing with a global nuclear power. What do we need to do? We have to be agile. We have to be able to be capable of being able to respond quickly. So in the words that, as I've been saying, what General Welch says, the way we think about how we do those missions, how we provide those capabilities that were on that previous chart has to change. So agility is a big part of it. And then diverse, to be able to continue to lever diverse ideas and innovation. And diverse there has a very multifaceted meaning. It means, how do we make sure we leverage airspace and cyberspace? Yes, we are the Air Force, but we operate in airspace and cyberspace. How do we make sure that we bring the best to bear of all of those? How do we use the synergism between them in order to provide capability? It also is associated with making sure that every airman, and frankly every American that wants to serve as an airman, is given an opportunity to do so. That's regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their age, regardless of their Air Force specialty code. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's our country, is our ability to be able to to solve problems, to move forward by leveraging every tool we have and making sure, and that includes all of the members of our team. So that's the message from our Secretary and our Chief about what we need to do as we go forward, strategic agility. Well, I will put it to you, the Air Force can't be agile if we're not agile. If Air Force Materiel Command isn't agile, I do not know how the Air Force is agile. If we aren't delivering capabilities that are agile, the Air Force isn't going to have agile capability. If we're not supporting those capabilities in an agile way, the Air Force can't be agile. So about 3 weeks ago, I asked the commanders of all the centers within Air Force Materiel Command, as well as the senior leaders at the headquarters, to come together for a little offsite to look at that environment we talked about, that world environment, look at this, where the Air Force strategy is, and to take a look at where did Air Force Materiel Command to go, and did we need to make sure we understood our focus and looked at our mission statement. And frankly, there was another reason why I wanted to look at the mission statement, and I know General Carter knows this, is because when I looked at the old mission statement, it wasn't clear to me that we had fully encompassed the missions that Air Force Materiel Command has acquired over the last couple of years. And in the one that's right on the top of my list is the role as in agile combat support when it comes to installation and mission support. So we, at the end of that, at the 2-day offsite we came up with a new mission statement and also a vision statement that articulated where we think we need to go. What do we want people to think about, to see when they think about Air Force Materiel Command? What is our vision for what Air Force Materiel Command should be? And if we go to the next chart, this is the mission statement. It's short, it's succinct, but it says exactly what we do. Deliver and support agile war-winning capabilities. It's not just airplanes, it's not just cyber tools, it's not just space tools, and we deliver it. That's everything from the discovery of the technology to the sustainment of it, but we support it too. And that support piece was one that we were very careful that we needed to make sure was included, because that fully encompasses, with the introduction of IMSC, I like to say we now truly are a full service Agile Combat Support Command, because we provide for every aspect of the Air Force mission. The vision, if you saw in the previous chart I had what the Air Force's vision was, which is the world's greatest Air Force. Fueled by airmen, empowered by innovation. For us, the most trusted and agile provider of innovative and cost-effective war-winning capabilities. It's a mouthful, and we struggled a little bit with it because we know everybody will remember the first 3 words. But the leadership really felt that every word in here was important. So when we think about it, this word trust. And that came to the point whether you're part of LCMC and MAGCOM comes and says, I need a new capability, the trust that we're going to deliver to them when they said it's going to be there, and the fact that it's going to be on time, or you're a wing commander and you turn to IMSC and you can trust that you're going to have the capabilities that you need to constitute your mission. So that word trust was one we talked a lot about. We want to be trusted. We want people, we want those we serve to come to us not because they have to, but because they want to. Agile, you notice Agile's in here twice. One is because we have to be agile in the way we do things. We've got to be able to quickly move out and execute, and we've got to bring the right thing at the right time. Agile war-winning capabilities is that the products we deliver have to be agile. So if it's a new aircraft, that aircraft has to be adaptable and able to respond to whether it's an ISIL threat or a Pacific region threat. So when we go in and we work on designing our new systems and modifications to our old systems, we need to be thinking about how do we make sure that what we deliver is agile. Things like something called open mission systems, which allows us in an aircraft to be able to swap out capabilities and bring new capabilities in without having to go back to the original vendor because we have a proprietary solution and we don't have the data and we can't turn it quickly because we're beholden to a contractor that may or may not still be in business. So that's an example. Agile in terms of how we provide what our policies and practices are with regards to delivery of services, so that a wing commander can be able to turn to his services, his force support squadron, and be able to get what he needs without dealing with bureaucracy, perhaps that's unnecessary, but still the quality capability that he expects to get. Innovative. We've got to be able to leverage the tremendous capabilities of our airmen and allow them to be innovative and allow us to take advantage of whether it's new technologies or new concepts or new ideas, but we have to be cost effective. We won the Cold War because we ran the Russians or the Soviets into being broke. We don't want that to happen to us. So when we think about what we do, we need to make sure that we really are good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and that we're getting we are getting the most we can out of every dollar and every airman, because airman's time is as valuable as the dollars. So when we have to keep that as one of the things we value so that our Air Force can continue to deliver the capability despite what will be at best level defense budgets into the near future. So that's our vision and the mission statement that came out of that offsite. Over the next few months, we're going to build a strategy out of this, establish some goals, and lay out a strategy. And we've targeted December to be when we will complete that strategy before we go home for Christmas. Nobody goes home until we have it. No, just kidding. So more to come on that. More to come. But all of you play an important part in this. All of you can contribute to helping us to achieve that vision and to continue to deliver the world's greatest Air Force, because we need it, and to become the most trusted and agile provider. Whether you're part of LCMC or you're part of IMSC or you're part of the test center, all of that, all of you play a role in being able to do that. Let's go to the next chart. These are the 6 centers that make up Air Force Materiel Command. And when I first came, I thought, wow, I just got, these 6 separate centers, they kind of all do their own thing. And then as I learned a little bit, I realized that there's a lot of synergism and connectivity in what they do. And it's interesting, if you look at these shields, and I'm not one that studies shields very often, so when I put them all together, and I got the history behind each of them, I found that there's some real important similarities and common themes in these shields. For example, you'll notice that they all are blue, predominantly blue background or blue lettering. The blue represents the sky, because the air domain is the primary way that our Air Force delivers delivers our capability. The yellow represents excellence in the people. And I think probably in Air Force Materiel Command, maybe more so than any other command, it's our people that is our most important aspect, because most of us, when we do our job, yeah, we use tools, but it's really what we do with our brains and with our hands that deliver the capability that we provide in support of the rest of the Air Force. You'll notice, now, first of all, I should highlight that you'll notice this one's all blurry. It's not because I had a bad picture. It's because the Heritage organization hasn't approved the IMSC shield yet. It's supposed to be like any day now, right, General Carter?
Yes, ma'am, it's getting close.
It's getting close. That's what they've been telling me for the 6 weeks that I've been in command, right? I should tell them what my husband used to say. He used to say, "So's Christmas," right? The other thing but you will notice that, and I'll give you a hint, there's one in IMSCs too. You'll notice the globe in 3, 4 of the 6 shields, representing the worldwide mission of those centers in Air Force Materiel Command. Whether it's the Nuke Weapons Center that's responsible for nuclear weapons wherever they are, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or the Life Cycle Management Center, who has 2 colors to their globe to represent the day and night responsibilities, or the Sustainment Center that has a gear and a chain around theirs representing the supply chain management and the industrial depot capabilities that they provide. So if you look at the mission of those centers, all of them are ones that have a worldwide responsibility, 24 hours a day, and the uniqueness represented by, the similarity represented even in their shields. The 2 that don't are those that are looking toward the future for us. The Air Force Research Lab, which is represented by that futuristic point, exploring into the future, into the unknown, and the Test Center, which took a more of a geography approach to their shield, where the 2 pieces represent Eglin, the shores of the Gulf, and the desert of Edwards Air Force Base. But you'll see the symbol over here again, and in Explore, and there's their logo here, which talks about the exploration. Even though each one of these you see, I've listed here their unique capabilities, but if you look at this and you look at where you work, you'll recognize that there is overlap between them. There's people in LCMC, in IMSC, and AFSC, in the Air Force Research Lab, and at the Air Force Test Center that deal with nuclear materials for support to our nuclear weapons. And our nuclear deterrent capability. LCMC, there's folks at LCMC that are engaged with transitioning new technologies and supporting the sustainment of them through life cycle management. The Sustainment Center, I spent part of yesterday over with the T-38 crowd and looked at what they're doing. They are doing a lot of supply chain management, but they're also doing a lot of engineering and development as they bring in the new mods that they're talking about. And the Test Center touches on each one of these. So there's a lot of synergism. And in reality, all of these pieces have to work together for our Air Force to be successful. I learned yesterday, we're going to talk a little later about the new enlisted evaluation system. And I thought, okay, I know that the IMSC folks will play a big role as we roll this out and we implement it, as we're supporting each of the wing commanders as they implement this. But I didn't know was that the entire success of the EES rides on the LCMC organization that is co-located there at Randolph Air Force Base, because they are responsible for the software changes that have to happen in all the personnel software to enable the new enlisted system to work. So if it doesn't happen in October the way it's supposed to, it's my fault, which means it's your fault. No. So, you know, when you think about that, that's something that's going to touch at least every enlisted member, but actually almost every airman, because all of us in some way will be involved in that, either as a supervisor or as working as part of an organization. So even a little thing like a new EES, it all rides on us. It rides on us to deliver. So I'm pretty excited about, I love a challenge, so I'm looking forward to this. But so you can see why our ability to be agile is so important to the rest of the Air Force. We can't succeed in doing it without everybody playing their part. There's a couple people that are in the audience that are excellent examples of what I'm talking about. One of which I met just a little while ago. Where's Lieutenant Cepeda? She's right there. Why don't you come on up here? Lieutenant Cepeda is over at the 46th Test Squadron, and she is responsible for cyber testing. That's not important in our Air Force right now, is it? And she's been very instrumental in doing developing cyber assessments. First assignment in the Air Force. Been here for a little over a year now, is that right?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years, so she must be getting ready to pin on First Lieutenant, huh? Well, I want to thank you for what you do for us every day. Now this is an IOU card, because I did not go to the Air Force Sustainment Center to order my coins. So on Thursday, I got an email from UPS telling me that there had been a train derailment and my coins weren't going to be delivered on Friday. So this is an IOU, but we will get you a coin as soon as UPS finds them. Thank you. All right. Now the other individual that represents the great airmen that take care of our people every day is Mr. Gorham. Did I pronounce that right? You're over here, come on up. I know that many of you in IMSC know this gentleman because he's the guy who's been responsible for helping you move into your new building. And I have done this, and it is not an easy job. And in fact, it can be messed up pretty easily. And from what I understand, it has gone pretty well. In fact, it was such a challenge for the 24th, little secret for you, for the 24th Air Force when they moved in here. General Vautrinot, who was the commander at the time, had such a hard time doing it and had so many challenges. She actually called me up when I was out at the Space and Missile Systems Center and asked if I had a program manager I could send down to San Antonio to help her with the move, to organize the move. I should have told her just to get Mr. Gorman, right? And so I want to thank you too for what you did in getting all these folks squared away. Thanks a lot. Thank you. All right, I want to transition now, if we go to the next chart, hopefully I haven't messed up this, to talk a little bit, first of all, a little bit about respect and resiliency. I talked to you a little bit about this in the beginning. I gave you that personal example just so to help to put it in context for how important this is to me. So if we go to the next chart, if you were here last year, you saw this same chart. This is the chart that General Wolfenbarger described about what her intent was. And I can tell you I haven't changed this. That's why I use this chart. We have to maintain a professional work environment throughout the AFMC, one that's defined by a culture of respect and resiliency. What I can tell you is, as I shared with you from the beginning, the Air Force is my family. This is my home. The people that are within the Air Force are my family. I want the people in my family to live in a safe and secure environment, to feel like they are safe and secure. I want them to be able to achieve to the best of their ability and to be empowered to be able to do that and to not be presented with obstacles either by the institution or by us in terms of being able to accomplish that. I want Zoe to someday be able to walk into the Air Force and walk and step, when the first time she steps to her F-35, to feel like that she's part of a family the same way that I do. That means that we have to be good wingmen, and we have to respect each other, and we have to do everything we can to make our environment safe. I mentioned to you that I grew up right outside of New York City, right outside of Newark. A lot of you may not know, but some of you may know this is not exactly the most affluent and the safest place you ever lived. But I can tell you the power of a community, making a place safe and making a place where people can achieve and succeed and succeed together. That's what I want Air Force Materiel Command. And I can assure you I will do my part, but we all have to do our part. So respect and resiliency. Don't forget, even 2 stars someday need a wingman, and we got to be there for each other. So the last topic I want to talk about, if we go to the last chart, is to just kind of fill you in a little bit on what's going on in the personnel business, because as I started out in the beginning, I lived through my first experience with force shaping and risk reduction was in 1976. My last experience with it was just this last year, as I dealt with writing retention recommendation forms and all the things that went along with those activities. But what I'm here today to tell you is we're not doing any of that this year. We're done. I had the opportunity, I guess you could call that, the opportunity of spending the last year in the Pentagon. And part of that was to be an active participant as we built the POM and the budget. And I can tell you both our secretary and our chief were pretty firm that they did not want to balance that budget on the backs of our airmen, and that included military and civilian. So we're actually on a slight growth path for our active duty force. We're to grow to 317,000. I think we're right at about 310 today, 311, if I remember correctly. We were headed to go down to about 303. You're not going to see large number increases anywhere, and they're going to be focused on these areas you see here: nuclear, maintenance, cyber. You know, today the biggest obstacle to fielding the F-35 is not enough maintainers. So you will see our focus in those areas. Our civilian workforce within Air Force Materiel Command, we've actually made a concerted effort over the last year to fill vacancies. And it's been a struggle because our compatriots over at the Air Force Personnel Center, when we had hiring freezes and we were doing those other things for sequestration, well, they had hiring freezes too. So now when we turn around and we say, go, we want to hire everybody, they got to hire, they're undermanned and understaffed to be able to support this. But we're working together to work our way to get back up to a point, and we've done very well in this command, by the way, despite the long times, to actually build up our civilian workforce. Don't anticipate any force reductions in our civilian workforce. You may have seen that Air Force Materiel Command headquarters had a Vera Visa at Wright-Pat, and that was because we took a 20% reduction in the headquarters as a result of the mandated reductions. And then this other thing called the stand-up of AFMC, right? So, so some of it was just moving to a debt, right? But that is my assurance, which I have heard directly from the chief and the secretary. So perhaps that will put your mind at ease, at least for now. And my advice to you is the same as the advice that the chief gave us in November of 2013, which is just do your job well, and keep that focus, and we'll all be successful. But one of the things that the chief has made a commitment that he really wants to make sure that we successfully complete is this transition to the new enlisted evaluation system. It's been a long time in coming. I'm personally very excited about it. I think it's going to be an opportunity for us to be able to really improve our ability to develop our airmen. And we have with us an expert on this system. Chief Warner has been traveling around the country talking to at different Air Force bases as part of an A1 team. I've asked them to spend a couple minutes just to fill you in on where that is. And I think actually, Chief, they're about ready to get briefings on it tomorrow, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So certainly I could spend an hour talking about it. I won't do that. Time doesn't permit it. Plus, so the EES team, as they've hit all 94 main operating bases, one of their last stops is they're at Randolph tomorrow, and I think it's Lackland Monday. I might have got that mixed up. But so certainly I'd throw out there, it is a huge change. Hopefully this isn't the first time as you sit in this audience that you've heard we're changing it. But if you're wearing stripes, you need to be at the brief, and certainly I'd tell you if you lead those that wear stripes, you need to be at the brief because it is a big change. You know, when we think about our evaluation system, it's really not about the piece of paper that we write it on, right? It's about what it does for our Air Force. You know, EPR is the foundation for how we advance and develop our enlisted force. It's how we decide who moves to positions of increased responsibility. It's how we decide who's going to be postured in the future to be in our leadership roles. So it really is foundational to airman business. And when you go back in history, you know, 1970 to 1990, we had the Airman Performance Report. And I know that we have retired airmen in the audience, so they'll remember this. We changed it in 1990 because it was inflated. Well, we went about 1990 to 1992 with an attempt to fix the inflation. I tell you, that didn't work, and we went back to normal. So from 1993 to today, we've had an inflated EPR system. And of course, inflated EPR system, it certainly, anybody who's gotten promoted, I'm not pointing out that it didn't work, because certainly I got promoted under that system. But I think we've promoted the right people. Have we promoted them at the right time? And I certainly think we've been successful in spite of an inflated system. So, it is foundationally changing, and it's going to systematically prevent any type of inflation, and it's going to allow us to really recognize those who are doing great at their job and those who are the most postured to move to the next rank. But certainly, it's a lot of change, and for those that are wearing stripes, certainly while our current system is inflated, I mean, we'll be honest, you understand that system, and so you understand what you have to do to advance. And so change brings about uncertainty, because what you think is, if I was sitting there, where am I going to fit in this new system? Okay. So what I tell you without getting into the details, go to the brief, is I think it's important as we go through this change. One, I would tell you I'm absolutely excited for what this system is going to do for our Air Force. And again, I'm a chief, so I don't get promoted again. But one, I care about all airmen, and I think this is going to do great things for our Air Force. And then I care about, as a father, I have an A1C who serves at Charleston Air Force Base, and I absolutely am excited at this system that allow him, if he steps up and he's the best performer that he can be, that he can then get recognized and it can help him advance if he earns it. If he doesn't, then he has to take the feedback, suck it up, get better, and then he can advance. But in the change, two things I would just say to the crowd real quick is remember the who and the why. Because it's big change, this is who asked for the change. You know, one, I would tell you that our Chief of Staff certainly authorized the change about 2.5 years. It's taken that long to develop it and start to get it out. But it wasn't him. It wasn't our Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force in terms of the who. They're part of the who. You know, the who is you. You know, I would certainly tell you, I've been a command chief now almost 10 years. I would bet that Chief Lugo Santiago would echo everything I'm about to say, that I have yet to go into an audience, and I talk to audiences all the time, and I could do it in here. If I asked you, is the system inflated, all of your hands would go up. I have yet to be in a forum in a question and answer where everyone doesn't say, Chief, when are we going to fix the inflated EPR system? I've yet to go to senior academy graduation over a 20-year period where a senior NCO didn't ask the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force or one of the formers or one of the MAGCOM command chiefs, Chief, when are we going to fix the inflated EPR system? So the change is driven by the who, and the who is you. You know, it really is us. We as a force have asked for this for years, and now we're getting to it. So the who is important. And the second part is the why. And the why is we need performance to be the most important reason in which we advance and promote our airmen. And today in our current system of inflation, I would tell you that job performance and what an airman does every day on the job plays very little impact in deciding who gets promoted, because everybody gets the highest rating. There's no way to discern the true superstar performer. So please remember the who, the why, and please make sure to make one of those briefings so you can get the details on it, and then of course stay up as the changes are implemented as we go along. So with that, ma'am, I think it is over to you before we get to questions and answers.
Is this back on? Yeah. Before we get the questions and answers, because I tend to forget to do this if I don't do it now, is I just want to stop for a moment and just say thank you. I want to thank you for what you do every day. You know, we have been for decades now an all-volunteer force. Now, what that really means is that there are young men and women, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, who voluntarily, every day, put themselves in harm's way to protect our freedoms. They go there with the weapon systems and the equipment and the services that we provide. And most of them don't even think about whether it's going to work or not, and whether it's going to be there. They trust us that we are going to deliver on what we said we did. We can't let them down. We can't let them down. But I do know that if they were able to stand, there are men and women, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen that are here today that have come home because of what you do. So whenever you get discouraged and you think that, you know, hey, why am I doing this? Think about them. And thank you for doing what you do so they can come home. All right, so we got any questions? Oh, looks like we got a few.
We do, ma'am. So like we've done in the past, I'll read one and then we'll do it the old-fashioned way and you can raise questions. Okay, that fair enough? All right, ma'am, we'll do the first one here, and could you please comment on the latest developments with the Budget Control Act?
You know, in the words of Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. Remember, I told you where I grew up, right? I had a bowling alley in my town that he owned, by the way. I can tell you that there are, in conversations that I've had with a number of the congressmen and the senators, that they are absolutely positive that they are not going to let the government shutdown or sequestration happen. But they ain't there yet. I'm optimistic from what I've heard because there's, you know, across the aisle discussion going on, and nobody wants to be going into an election year to be the one they point to and say, you're why, you know, the government got shut down, or you're why we're furloughing civilians, or any of those other things. So I'm optimistic, but like I said, in the words of Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. So we'll have to, you know, we'll watch I'll be watching as long as the rest of you are. But I also can tell you that, having watched what the Air Force has done over the last year, we have postured ourselves to do everything we can to ensure that we have laid things out to short of you know, the law saying something, to not have to do things like furloughs that we did the last time. And again, all of that depends on what our Congress decides they are going how they're going to approach it. But I know there are many of them over there that will say never again. So we'll see. So not a very satisfying answer. I apologize. I can't give you anything more but what, you know, my observations have been. Anybody with a question out there? Since that's right, we were alternating. Anybody with a question? No? How about another one, Chief? Maybe somebody will be thinking this while we're answering this next one.
All right, ma'am. Is there anything coming down the pipe to further transition us away from an AC sustainment model towards a seamless cradle-to-grave model?
Yes. I just talked about our mission and our vision statement in the discussion we had about the centers. I think very much so you will start to see that reflected in that strategy I talked about. It was very, you could talk to General Carter. We had a lot of discussions about that at our offsite, and I'll tell you, General Carter was very enlightening to some of the center commanders about, you know, what it meant to have IMSC as part of it, and that's a big part of, as I mentioned earlier, our ability to truly be an agile combat support MAGCOM, to be able to provide that full service support that the Air Force needs Air Force Materiel Command to provide. So I do think we are on that path. These things never happen overnight, but I think you will, and I am looking for ideas and suggestions, because I do believe doing that improves our agility. We need to eliminate any, what you might call, organizational borders that are created that aren't necessary. And the only way I know to do that is to make sure that the command, that every airman in the command understands the full mission and what their part is in being able to provide that support.
Okay, any questions from the audience? Here we go.
Hey, Lieutenant Colonel Chad Bonner, I work at the Air Force Civil Engineer Center. One of the programs I work is a centralized program for facility sustainment restoration and modernization. But I understand that a lot of the programs are being centralized, and that takes a lot of capability away from commanders at the installations, especially squadron commanders. And so one of the concerns I have is, do you think installation commanders understand what their squadron commanders can and can't do for them, as a lot of these programs get centralized and are executed more at our centers and in the Air Force IMSC?
Okay, remember I told you I will always give it to you straight. No, I don't think they do. And neither do I think wing commanders do, and neither do I think Air Force neither do I think Air Force MAGCOM commanders do. And General Carter and I have talked about this a number of times, and we're going to be stepping through this together. But I do believe, having, like I said, being an installation commander, that we can provide a lot better capability by doing it the way we've done it than the way we've spread it, by having that spread out. More consistency, more agility, ability to bring the right people to bear on a problem when you have a problem, as opposed to the individual stovepipes. I will tell you, I think one of the key organizations in this are those DETs, are the DET commanders and those folks, because they are going to be the key conduit for information, for communication, for helping to bring reality and perception together, because they do understand, at least, from the MAGCOM perspective, what the needs and the requirements are. But by being part of IMSC, they also understand what the capabilities of IMSC are and how those could be brought to bear. So the DETs and their commanders are absolutely key, in my mind, to the success of helping everybody along that line understand, what does this mean. I've lived on Army post after the Army created its separate garrison command. It was rocky. In fact, I have a brother-in-law who's an Army chaplain, and he's like, I don't know who I work for anymore. So we took the time to learn as we were formulating this about what they did and how they did it, and there are specific things we did. And so in my mind, the short answer to your question is no, but that's part of what we're going to need to continue to work through as we roll this out.
Ma'am, I think we have time for one more question, so go out to the audience. I think way in the back there.
Hi, ma'am. I'm Lori Overton. I work for FMSVT. Mine is a fun question. Newark, New Jersey? Bayonne, New Jersey.
Bayonne.
Yep.
Bayonne, New Jersey. Everybody, what was that? The Saturday Night Live, right? Bayonne, New Jersey. My first boyfriend lived in Bayonne, New Jersey.
There you go. So that was it.
Oh, is that the question?
I just wanted to
All right. All right, I guess we're out of time. Again, I want to thank you for coming this afternoon. I know you all have real busy schedules with lots to do, so I appreciate you taking the time to come over here in that heat Of course, I guess you're used to that, right? I really got spoiled. I spent 6 of the last 10 years in Southern California. I gotta tell you, there's a lot of things about LA that aren't nice, but the weather is amazing. So I thank you again for what you do every day, and I really can't tell you how honored and how excited I am about the opportunity to serve with you in the next couple of years, and more to come on our strategic plan. Thanks a lot.